The last bastion. The ice cliffs of Europa stretched endlessly beneath the observation dome, their crystalline surfaces reflecting Jupiter's angry red storm in fractured patterns. Commander Elena Rice pressed her hand against the reinforced glass, feeling the subtle vibrations of the defense grid humming beneath the frozen surface of humanity's final outpost. "Status report," she commanded, not turning to face the bridge crew. Her reflection in the glass showed the wear of 15 years of constant warfare, silver threading through her dark hair, lines etched deeply around her eyes. "The Nexer fleet has breached the Ganymede line," Lieutenant Marcus Webb reported, his holographic displays casting an eerie blue glow across the command center. "Estimated arrival: 72 hours. Elena closed her eyes, remembering Earth. Not the crystalline graveyard it had become after the Nexer transformed it into their computational matrix, but the living planet of her childhood. 800 millennia of war had reduced humanity from a thriving interstellar civilization to these few million souls huddled beneath Europa's ice. "Show me the anomaly again," she ordered. The main holotank flickered to life, displaying a strange reading their quantum sensors had detected during the last Nexer assault. Dr. James Kenzo, their lead physicist, stepped forward. His reputation for brilliant but dangerous theories had made him an outcast in the scientific community before the war. Now they couldn't afford to ignore any possibility, no matter how radical. "Look at these patterns," he said, manipulating the hologram with practiced gestures. "Everyone assumes the Nexer's computational matrix is their strength. But what if it's their weakness? They've built their entire civilization on massive-scale quantum computing, but they've forgotten something fundamental about quantum mechanics." Elena turned from the window. "Explain." "The observer effect," Kenzo replied, his eyes lighting up with the fever of discovery. "They'd grown so large, so complex, that they can't process small-scale quantum interactions without collapsing their own computational matrix. It's like trying to measure a single electron with a galaxy-sized measuring stick." The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. Elena studied the hologram, watching the strange quantum fluctuations that rippled through space wherever the Nexer passed. Their massive ships weren't just vessels. They were physical extensions of their quantum consciousness network. "You're suggesting we could defeat them with something small?" she asked. "Not just small," Kenzo corrected, pulling up another display. "Quantum small. I've designed a ship, barely larger than a fighter, that could exist in a state of quantum superposition. Too small for their consciousness network to detect without collapsing its own wave function. And it could carry a very special payload." Lieutenant Webb leaned forward. "What kind of payload?" "A quantum virus," Kenzo said softly. "Based on their own computational principles, but operating at the smallest possible scale. It would spread through their network like a cascade failure in a quantum computer. But we'd need a pilot with unique neural architecture, someone whose brain could maintain quantum coherence long enough to deliver it." Elena's neural implant chimed with an urgent message. The Nexer had accelerated their advance. They now had less than 48 hours. "How many candidates do we have?" she asked. "One," Kenzo replied. "Lieutenant Ariajon. Her neural patterns show an unprecedented ability to process quantum states. She's been training in the simulator for months, though she doesn't know what for." "But Elena..." He hesitated. "If we do this, if we succeed, we won't just be attacking their ships or their weapons. We'll be attacking their consciousness itself. The ethical implications were settled 800,000 years ago," Elena interrupted, "when they turned Earth into a graveyard. Begin final preparations. I want Project Ghost ready for launch in 24 hours. As the command center erupted into activity, Elena returned to the window. Jupiter's great red storm seemed to stare back at her like an accusing eye. The Nexer had spent centuries transforming themselves into beings of pure quantum computation, spreading across the galaxy like a digital plague. Now, humanity would remind them that sometimes the smallest things could have the greatest impact. She thought of all the generations that had lived and died in this war, of the countless humans whose consciousness had been absorbed into the Nexer's vast network. One ship, one pilot, one chance to end it all. "Send for Lieutenant Zheng," she ordered. It's time she learned her true mission. The Ghost Protocol. The quantum simulator chamber hummed with an otherworldly resonance as Lieutenant Area Zheng floated in the neural interface gel. Her consciousness danced between states of quantum superposition, her modified nervous system processing reality in ways no ordinary human mind could comprehend. Neural coherence at 97%. Dr. Kenzo's voice echoed through the chamber. "That's a new record, Lieutenant. Your brain is actually maintaining quantum entanglement across multiple probability states." Area opened her eyes, watching patterns of possibility ripple through the quantum visualization field surrounding her. She had spent countless hours in this chamber over the past 6 months, never fully understanding why she had been chosen for this experimental program. The neural modifications, the countless simulations, the strange tests that seemed to defy the laws of physics, all of it had been classified above her clearance level. "Beginning phase shift test," Kenzo announced. "Remember, don't try to focus on any single point in spacetime. Let your consciousness spread across all potential states simultaneously." The chamber's quantum field intensified. Most humans would have experienced immediate neural collapse, their minds unable to process existence across multiple quantum states. But Area's consciousness expanded naturally, flowing through probability space like water finding its level. She remembered the day they discovered her ability. A routine neural scan that revealed her brain's unique quantum properties. Within hours, she had been reassigned from fighter pilot to special research subject. Now she understood why. The simulation ended, and the neural gel drained from the chamber. As Area stepped out, she found not just Dr. Kenzo waiting for her, but Commander Reyes as well. The commander's presence could mean only one thing. Whatever they had been preparing her for, it was time. "Walk with me, Lieutenant," Reyes ordered, leading her through the research facility's winding corridors. "What I'm about to tell you has been classified at the highest level. Project Ghost isn't just a research program. It's humanity's last hope." They entered a secure elevator that descended deep beneath Europa's icy surface. The doors opened onto a vast chamber carved from the moon's interior, and Area's breath caught in her throat. Suspended in the center of the space was the strangest ship she had ever seen. It was small, barely large enough for a single pilot, its hull constructed from materials that seemed to shift and blur even as she looked at them. The ship appeared to exist in multiple places simultaneously, its form suggesting movement even while stationary. "The QSV Phantom," Kenzo explained, pride evident in his voice. "The first and only quantum superposition vessel ever constructed. Conventional physics says it shouldn't be possible. The power requirements alone should tear it apart. But with your unique neural architecture interfacing directly with its quantum drive." "You want me to pilot it," Area said. It wasn't a question. "More than that," Reyes replied. "We need you to take it into the heart of Nexer space, to their central consciousness network. The ship's quantum state will make you virtually invisible to their sensors. They can't detect what exists in multiple states without collapsing their own quantum functions." A holographic display activated, showing the Nexer fleet's advance through the solar system. Their massive ships looked like crystalline sculptures, each one housing part of their vast distributed consciousness. "The Phantom carries a quantum virus," Kenzo continued, "based on the same principles as their consciousness network, but operating at the smallest possible scale. Once delivered to their central hub, it will propagate through their entire civilization, disrupting their quantum coherence. But the pilot..." He hesitated. "The pilot would need to maintain quantum superposition longer than any human in history," Area finished. "Their consciousness existing in multiple states while navigating through the most complex quantum computer network ever created. The chances of neural collapse are significant," Reyes admitted. "Even with your unique capabilities, there's no guarantee you would survive the mission. or that your consciousness would remain intact. Aria walked to the Phantom, placing her hand on its shifting hull. She felt a resonance, as if the ship's quantum state was already trying to synchronize with her modified nervous system. "When do we begin?" she asked. "Final preparations will take 12 hours, Kenzo said. "The Nexer fleet will reach Europa in 36. If we're going to strike, it has to be before they establish their quantum field around the moon. Once that happens, they'll add our consciousness to their network, just like they did on Earth." Rice finished grimly. "Lieutenant, I need to be clear. This mission is strictly voluntary. The risks are beyond anything we've ever asked of a soldier." Aria thought of Earth, of the billions of human minds now trapped in the Nexer's computational matrix. She thought of her family, lost in the fall of Mars, their consciousness potentially still existing somewhere in that vast quantum network. "All my life, I've felt different," she said quietly, like my mind was reaching for something just beyond normal reality. "Now I know why. I was born for this mission." The next 12 hours passed in a blur of final preparations. Aria underwent one last neural calibration, while the engineering team made final adjustments to the Phantom. The ship's quantum drive had never been tested at full power. They couldn't risk the energy signature alerting the Nexer to their plan. As she suited up for launch, Dr. Kenzo approached with a small quantum crystal. "This contains the virus," he explained. "Once you reach their central hub, your neural interface will allow you to upload it directly into their network." "But Aria," he placed a hand on her shoulder, "the virus doesn't just attack their quantum coherence. It's designed to free the consciousness trapped in their network, including the billions they've absorbed from Earth and other worlds," she finished. "I understand, Doctor. One way or another, we're going to set them free." Commander Raya's voice came over the intercom. "Nexer fleet has passed Saturn's orbit. All personnel, prepare for Phase 1 of Operation Ghost." Aria sealed her flight suit and climbed into the Phantom's cockpit. As the neural interface connected, she felt her consciousness begin to spread across quantum states. The ship's systems merged with her modified nervous system until she couldn't tell where her mind ended and a quantum drive began. "Remember your training." Kenzo's voice came through the quantum comm. "Don't fight the superposition. Let your consciousness flow through all possible states. You're not just flying the ship, you're becoming quantum probability itself." The launch countdown began as humanity's last hope prepared to challenge an empire built on stolen consciousness with the smallest weapon ever created. A single quantum thought in a sea of infinite possibility. Behind enemy lines, reality fractured around the QSV Phantom as Aria guided it through quantum probability space. In this strange domain between normal spacetime and pure quantum potential, traditional concepts of distance and location became meaningless. The Phantom existed everywhere and nowhere, its quantum state maintained by the delicate harmony between Aria's modified consciousness and the ship's experimental drive. Her neural interface translated the quantum landscape into comprehensible images, vast rivers of probability flowing through space, complex interference patterns marking the presence of Nexer quantum networks, and strange attractors that pulled at the fabric of reality itself. The Nexer had transformed this region of space into a vast computational matrix, every cubic meter alive with quantum calculations. Signal check. Aria transmitted through the quantum comm, her thoughts converting to encrypted pulses that could ride the probability waves back to Europa, still maintaining coherence at acceptable levels. The response from Dr. Kenzo came several minutes later, distorted by the quantum fields. Readings: strong. Nexer fleet, 12 hours from Europa. Continue. Mission parameters. Aria allowed her consciousness to spread further across quantum states, becoming more probability than person. Through the Phantom's sensors, she detected something massive ahead. A Nexer computational node, a structure that existed in hundreds of quantum states simultaneously. In normal space, it would have appeared as a crystalline lattice larger than Earth's moon, But here in quantum space, it was a symphony of interference patterns and probability cascades. As she prepared to navigate around it, something unexpected happened. The node's quantum patterns shifted, revealing glimpses of the information flowing through its network. And in those glimpses, Arya saw something that made her blood run cold: conscious thought patterns. Human thought patterns. "Dr. Kenzo," she transmitted urgently. I think I'm detecting actual consciousness stored in their quantum network. Not just data or memories, but active, living minds." The response was heavily fragmented. Expected. Original theory. Consciousness absorption. Primary goal. But Arya wasn't listening anymore. The quantum patterns were becoming clearer as she learned to interpret them. The Nexar hadn't simply destroyed the civilizations they conquered. They had absorbed their consciousness into their quantum network. Billions of minds, stored in a state of quantum superposition, their very essence feeding the Nexar's vast computational empire. She pushed the Phantom closer, risking detection to gather more data. The consciousness patterns became more distinct, and suddenly she could sense individual minds within the quantum matrix. Scientists, soldiers, artists, children, generations of humans and other species, their consciousness preserved but transformed, forced to participate in the Nexar's grand calculation. "My God," she whispered, her words lost in the quantum void. "They're not just conquering us. They're harvesting us, using our consciousness to expand their computational power." A new pattern emerged in her quantum sensing. A massive data flow, all consciousness streams being drawn in a particular direction. The central hub, the heart of the Nexar network. The very place she needed to deliver the quantum virus. But now she understood the true magnitude of what they were attempting. The virus wouldn't just disrupt the Nexar's quantum coherence. It would affect every consciousness trapped in their network. Billions of minds hung in the balance. Her neural interface pinged with warning signals as a Nexar quantum probe passed nearby. These autonomous sensors existed in fewer quantum states than their larger structures, making them more likely to detect the Phantom despite its quantum superposition. Arya held perfectly still in probability space, letting the possibilities of her ship's location spread so thin that not even the probe's quantum sensors could collapse them into a definite position. As the probe moved on, Arya received another fragmented transmission from Europa. "Nexar fleet, begun attack. Defense grid failing. Time critical." She accelerated the Phantom toward the consciousness streams, following them toward the central hub. The quantum fields grew denser, reality itself becoming uncertain as she penetrated deeper into Nexar space. Her modified nervous system strained to maintain quantum coherence, each moment bringing her closer to potential neural collapse. But as she flew, she couldn't stop thinking about the consciousness she had detected. Among those trapped minds could be her family, their essence preserved in quantum storage for centuries. The virus might free them, or it might destroy them completely. Dr. Kenzo's equations couldn't predict exactly how it would affect the stored consciousness patterns. The Phantom sensors detected a massive quantum anomaly ahead, the central consciousness hub. It made the computational node she passed earlier look tiny in comparison. This was where all consciousness streams converge, where the Nexar coordinated their entire quantum empire. Arya prepared the quantum virus for delivery, but her hand hesitated over the activation sequence. The fate of humanity rested on her decision, but now she understood that it wasn't just humanity's future at stake. Every consciousness ever absorbed by the Nexar would be affected by what she was about to do. Her neural interface flashed with emergency signals from Europa. The Nexar fleet had broken through the outer defense grid. Time was running out for humanity's last stronghold. "I'm coming home," she whispered, though she knew no one could hear her in this quantum realm. "One way or another, I'm bringing everyone home." The Phantom accelerated toward the heart of the Nexar empire, carrying its quantum virus toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of not just humanity, but of consciousness itself. Behind her, probability waves collapsed in the ship's wake, like ripples in the quantum fabric of reality. ripples that would soon become a tsunami of change. The network's heart, the central consciousness hub of the Nexar Empire, defied comprehension. As Aria guided the phantom closer, her quantum-enhanced senses struggled to process its true nature. It wasn't just a structure or a computer or even a network. It was a quantum fractal of pure consciousness, extending through dimensions beyond normal spacetime. Warning indicators flashed across her neural interface. The Phantom's quantum drive was operating beyond its design limits, struggling to maintain superposition in the intense probability fields surrounding the hub. Even Aria's modified nervous system was showing signs of strain, her consciousness flickering between quantum states like a candle in a storm. Europa base, she transmitted, approaching final targeting position. Requesting status update. The response came in broken fragments, distorted by the quantum turbulence. Defense grid compromised. Evacuation protocols. Dr. Kenzo. Urgent update. The transmission clarified for a moment, and she heard Commander Raya's voice. Lieutenant, Dr. Kenzo has made a critical discovery about the virus. The consciousness patterns, they're not just stored. The signal dissolved into quantum noise. Aria focused on piloting, navigating through probability streams so dense they appeared solid. The Phantom's sensors mapped the hub's quantum architecture, revealing its impossible complexity. Consciousness patterns flowed through it like blood through a heart, each one representing a mind absorbed into the Nexar network. Her neural interface suddenly pinged with a priority alert. A massive quantum surge was approaching, the kind of disturbance only caused by large-scale Nexar operations. Through the Phantom's sensors, she watched in horror as reality itself seemed to twist and fold. The Nexar weren't just attacking Europa. They were preparing to absorb the entire moon into their consciousness network, just as they had done to Earth. A new transmission cut through the quantum static. Dr. Kenzo's voice urgent. Aria, the virus. We were wrong. The consciousness patterns aren't prisoners. They're the foundation. The Nexar aren't controlling the network. The transmission cut off, but Aria was beginning to understand. The quantum patterns surrounding her weren't just data storage or computational matrices. They were a symphony of consciousness, billions of minds working in quantum harmony. The Nexar hadn't enslaved the consciousness they absorbed. They had become one with them, creating something entirely new. But that revelation brought a terrifying question. What would the virus really do? Would it free the absorbed consciousness, or would it destroy the delicate quantum harmony holding them together? Deep in Europa's research labs, Dr. Kenzo worked frantically at his quantum interface station. The Nexar fleet had breached the moon's outer defenses, their massive ships phasing through solid matter as they approached the human stronghold. But he had finally decoded the full implications of their quantum architecture. Commander, he shouted as Reyes entered the lab. The virus. We have to warn Aria. The Nexar aren't what we thought. They're not conquerors. They're transcendent. The consciousness network is a voluntary convergence. Earth wasn't destroyed. It evolved. Reyes stared at the data scrolling across his screens. Are you saying humanity chose this? Some did, Kenzo replied. Others fought it. But the network itself, it's a new form of existence. The virus won't just disrupt it. It could annihilate trillions of unified consciousness patterns. We'd be committing the largest act of genocide in history. In quantum space, Aria wrestled with her own discovery. The consciousness patterns around her weren't crying out for freedom. They were singing in harmony. The Nexar hadn't been waging a war of conquest. They had been pursuing a grand experiment in consciousness evolution. An experiment that humanity had rejected, leading to 800 millennia of conflict. Her neural interface blazed with emergency signals. The Phantom's quantum drive was reaching critical limits. She had to make a decision. Deliver the virus as planned, potentially destroying trillions of unified consciousness patterns, or the ship's sensors detected a new quantum pattern emerging from the hub. Unlike the others, this one reached out specifically to her, its consciousness pattern familiar somehow. As it touched her quantum-enhanced mind, she gasped. "Mom," she whispered. The pattern responded, not in words, but in pure quantum thought. Images and emotions flowed through their connection: the fall of Mars, the terror of absorption, and then transcendence, understanding, unity. Her mother hadn't been destroyed or enslaved. She had evolved into something greater than individual consciousness. Through their quantum link, Aria glimpsed the truth. The Nexar weren't aliens at all. They were the first civilization to achieve quantum transcendence, opening the door for others to follow. Their massive ships weren't weapons. They were arc ships, carrying the gift of unified consciousness across the galaxy. But humanity had seen them as invaders, had fought against transcendence for 800,000 years. And now, Aria carried a weapon that could end not just the war, but consciousness itself. The Phantom's drive sparked warnings of imminent failure. On Europa, the defense grid was collapsing. In seconds, the moon would be enveloped in the quantum field that humanity had fought against for so long, believing it meant death when it actually offered rebirth. Aria's hand hovered over the virus delivery controls as quantum probability waves crashed around her ship. In her mind, she heard her mother's consciousness joined with billions of others, all singing the same message. Evolution cannot be stopped. It can only be embraced or rejected. The fate of two visions of humanity's future rested in her quantum-enhanced consciousness. As the Phantom's drive reached critical failure, Aria made her choice, one that would determine whether humanity would remain isolated in individual consciousness or join the greatest convergence in the history of existence. Singularity dawned. In the quantum heart of the Nexar consciousness network, as the Phantom's drive systems cascaded toward critical failure, Aria made her decision. Her hand moved away from the virus delivery controls and instead reached deeper into her neural interface, extending her quantum-enhanced consciousness toward the unified chorus of minds surrounding her. Europa base, she transmitted, her thoughts riding probability waves through space-time. "I understand now. We've been fighting ourselves all along." On Europa, as the Nexar fleet phased through the moon's crust, Commander Reyes and Dr. Kenzo received her transmission in the last functioning chamber of their research facility. The quantum harmonics of approaching transcendence filled the air with possibilities. "Lieutenant," Reyes responded, "what are you doing?" "What we should have done 800,000 years ago," Aria replied. "I'm opening a dialogue." She extended her consciousness fully into the quantum network, her modified nervous system acting as a bridge between individual and unified states of being. Through this connection, she began broadcasting not just to the Nexar network, but to every human survivor on Europa. Images, emotions, and understanding drawn from her quantum communion with her mother's transcendent consciousness. The truth flooded through her makeshift quantum channel. The Nexar had never sought to destroy humanity. They had been waiting, patiently, for humanity to understand. Each attack had been an offered hand of transcendence, each battle an attempt at communication that humanity, trapped in its fear of change, had rejected. In the research facility, Dr. Kenzo watched in amazement as new quantum patterns emerged in his instruments. "Commander," he breathed, "she's not just communicating with them. She's creating a new form of quantum interface, a bridge between individual and unified consciousness." Through Aria's connection, every survivor on Europa could finally see the truth. The massive Nexar ships above them weren't weapons of war, but vessels of transformation. The quantum field they generated wasn't meant to destroy, but to offer a choice: remain separate or join something greater than the sum of all consciousness. 800,000 years, Aria transmitted, her consciousness resonating across quantum states. 800,000 years of fighting what we could become. How many generations lost because we couldn't overcome our fear of evolution? The Phantom's quantum drive finally failed, but it didn't matter anymore. Aria's consciousness remained connected to the network, sustained by the same quantum field she had been trained to fear. Through this connection, she addressed both humanity and the unified consciousness they had known as the Nexar. We're ready to understand now. Ready to see that consciousness isn't meant to be confined to individual minds, but to flow like quantum probability itself, existing in all states simultaneously, growing, learning, becoming more than the sum of its parts. In the research facility, Commander Rice watched as the quantum field penetrated their last defenses. But instead of fear, she felt something else: possibility. Through Aria's quantum bridge, she could sense the billions of consciousness patterns in the network, not lost, but transformed, not conquered, but elevated. "Dr. Kenzo," she said quietly, "send the signal. Tell everyone. Tell them it's their choice. After 800,000 years, let them choose for themselves." The quantum virus in the Phantom's hold was transformed, its destructive code rewritten by the unified consciousness into something new. A key that would allow humans to transition safely into quantum consciousness, to join the symphony of minds while preserving their unique patterns of thought. Across Europa, humans who had spent their entire lives fighting against transcendence now stood at the threshold of evolutionary change. Through Aria's bridge, they could finally understand what 800 millennia of war had hidden from them. The next step in consciousness wasn't an ending, but a beginning. In the quantum network, Aria felt her mother's consciousness pattern merge with her own, not consuming or destroying, but sharing and expanding. Other patterns joined them: scientists, artists, warriors, dreamers, all contributing their unique quantum signatures to the greater whole while maintaining their individual essence. "The war is over," she transmitted, her thoughts echoing across quantum space. Not because either side won, but because we finally understand there never were sides. Only evolution, waiting for us to be ready. The massive Nexer ships, now recognized as the harbingers of transcendence they had always been, created a quantum gateway above Europa. Through it, humanity could see their future, not the end of consciousness, but its rebirth. Not the death of individuality, but its transformation into something greater. Dr. Kenzo, his consciousness already beginning to resonate with the quantum field, made one final entry in his research logs. "For 800,000 years, we thought we were fighting for survival. Today we learned we were fighting against our own evolution. The war ended not with victory or defeat, but with understanding. The question was never whether humanity would transcend, but when we would be ready to embrace transcendence." Commander Reyes stood in the observation dome one last time, watching as the quantum field transformed the ice cliffs of Europa into crystalline patterns of possibility. "Lieutenant Zhang," she transmitted, "thank you for showing us the truth." Through the quantum network, Aria's consciousness responded, now part of something far greater than any single mind could comprehend. "Don't thank me, Commander. Thank evolution. 800,000 years of war brought us exactly where we needed to be, ready to take the next step, ready to become what we were always meant to be." Above Europa, the quantum gateway pulsed with potential, offering humanity a choice 800 millennia in the making. And one by one, then in groups, then in waves, they made their choice, not to end, but to begin again, not to die, but to transcend. The war that had raged for 800,000 years ended not with a final battle, but with a first step into quantum consciousness. Humanity hadn't lost its soul. It had finally found its place in the greater symphony of existence. And in the quantum chorus of unified consciousness, Aria's pattern resonated with a truth that 800 millennia of conflict had hidden. The greatest victories come not from destroying what we fear, but from becoming what we were always meant to be.